The internet loves extremes, doesn't it? We have her on one side. She's baking sourdough, submitting to her husband, and telling you that modern women are miserable because they've rejected the feminine. They've rejected their purpose as a woman, etc., etc. On the other hand, we have the woman waking up at 5 a.m., leading a team of 20, running 5 side hustles, and selling you a mindset course on LinkedIn. One with a soft life aesthetic, and one with a cortisol level through the roof but flying first class. But what if I told you that neither the tradwife, #tradwife, nor the boss babe is anything new? What if I told you that they're not just internet inventions, but iterations of something ancient? These women didn't just appear with TikTok or YouTube or Instagram. They've been here for thousands of years. They wore robes instead of Reformation dresses. But the vibes, the archetypes, they're ancient. Today, we're diving into 2 of the most viral feminine identities in the modern era, the tradwife and the boss babe, and their mythological foremothers. Let's get started. The tradwife is back, or maybe she never left. She's wearing a linen dress, quoting Proverbs 31, and encouraging you to submit to your husband. Not because she's oppressed, no, because she's in her feminine. She's in her power. They love phrases like, I love being in my feminine, the man leads, the woman supports, or biblical womanhood is real empowerment. She makes bread, she homeschools, she does skin cycling and sourdough, and she wants you to stop listening to feminism and start listening to your man. The roots of this domestic goddess go all the way back to Olympus, even if what we're seeing is the modern TikTok version. The tradwife aesthetic has had a full-on revival. Think of 1950s housewife meets cottagecore meets Instagram theology. She's all about baking, birthing, and Bible verses. You'll hear her say things like, feminism lied to us. And there's nothing more radical than being a homemaker in today's world. And in a way, she's right. Choosing domestic life in the age of hustle culture is countercultural. But the image she presents, calm, soft, surrendered, is just one side of a very ancient coin. Let's talk about her mythological ancestors. So, who are her mythological counterparts? Now, bear in mind, this does not mean that the tradwife is an exact replica of any of these, more so that they have elements of these ancient mythological figures. Let's start with Hestia, the hearth queen. Hestia was the goddess of the hearth and home. She didn't do scandal, okay? She wasn't out here starting wars like Athena or seducing mortals like Aphrodite. She stayed inside, literally. No drama, no mess, just fire and flame. She tended to the sacred fire in every home and every temple in ancient Greece. That flame, it wasn't symbolic. It was hers. Without Hestia, the center didn't hold in a family, in a city, or even on Mount Olympus. She was essential, but also invisible. Hestia is the only Olympian who never causes drama in myths. She's not out here scheming, cheating, or fighting with her siblings. In fact, she barely shows up in the stories at all. And that's the point. She represents the original silent strength, the stability that holds everything together behind the scenes. But here's where it starts to differ from a lot of modern tradwives. Hestia never married. She took a vow of chastity. She was pursued by Apollo and Poseidon and said, no thanks. In a world where goddesses were constantly being seduced, abducted, or married off, Hestia said, I'm good. I've got my fire. So even though many tradwives today may unknowingly channel Hestia, the modesty, the domesticity, the centering of the home, they often miss this part. She was not a wife. She was not a mother. She did not submit to her husband because she had zero interest in having one. Although I will say there is a subset of online women who aren't married, don't have kids, but still cosplay as tradwives online. They've got their aprons, their sourdough starters, their TikToks about biblical femininity, but they're single. Hestia core, honestly. She's the sacred fire, not the Pinterest perfect housewife. She didn't build a brand. She was the the brand, quiet, steady, centered, and honestly uninterested in men. Now, Demeter, she's the mom friend you do not mess with. She was the goddess of grain and fertility and harvest, literally life itself. She nourished the earth, kept the seasons turning, made sure people had food. She was every farmer's best friend until somebody messed with her kid. And here's what happened. Hades, god of the underworld, abducted her daughter Persephone to make her his wife, because that's apparently how we solved loneliness in ancient myths. But anyway, and Demeter, she went full scorched earth, literally. She withdrew her gifts from the land. Crops withered, famine spread, the gods panicked. And she said, until I get my daughter back, everyone suffers. That wasn't a protest. That was a planetary shutdown. Actually, I did a whole video on this kind of divine refusal titled When Women Just Stop Working, inspired by the day that Icelandic women did just that. This is not mythology, this is real life. And I'll link it here. Anyway, only when Persephone was partially returned and allowed to spend half the year with her mother did Demeter allow the world to bloom again. That is not submission. That is divine maternal rage. Tradwives often talk about protecting their children from the culture. They'll say things like, I'm shielding my children from the toxic modern values. And sure, that's Demeter-ish, but it's Demeter-light. Because Demeter didn't just set boundaries. She didn't just make a heartfelt post. She stopped the planet. She didn't shield, she avenged. She's not some gentle earth mama in a flower crown. She's not smiling loftily while her husband leads. She is the OG boundary queen. Her vibe is, if you touch my child, I will starve your civilization. You see this kind of Demeter energy more so in the moms who became political activists because something happened to their kid. The ones who show up at school board meetings and don't back down. The Maha moms who took on DC and freaking won. The women who say, my kids come first and I will burn this place to the ground if I have to. That's the real divine feminine. It's not always soft. Sometimes it's furious and vengeful and dark. And then we have Penelope, wife of Odysseus, queen of Ithaca, and the patron saint of holding it together. She's the blueprint of loyalty, modesty, and feminine endurance. She waited 20 years for her man to come home while he was off fighting some war, getting lost and, casually hooking up with goddesses. Meanwhile, Penelope was back home running the palace, raising her son and fending off a literal horde of suitors trying to marry her and take her throne. But here's the part that never gets mentioned on the submissive housewife Instagram. Penelope wasn't just waiting, she was working the system. She told her suitors she'd choose one of them once she'd finished weaving a burial shroud for her father-in-law. So every day, she'd weave, and every night, she'd secretly undo the stitches. That's not passive, that's manipulation with a loom. She played the long game. She used her brains, her beauty, and her grief as tools. She stayed still on purpose. She wasn't loud, she wasn't rebellious, but she was in control the whole time. She's a woman who waits, but she's not wasting time. She's a CEO of keeping everything together while the men are off in the world doing who knows what. Penelope's energy is the one who quietly runs the family business behind the scenes while the husband is quote-unquote in charge. No offense, gentlemen. Think the iconic line in the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding. The husband is the head and the woman is the neck. She's the one who lets people underestimate her on purpose. She's strategic softness, grace with a sharp edge. She's not here announcing her strength, she's living it. So when tradwives hold her up as the ideal wife, they're not wrong, but they're often missing the real plot. Penelope wasn't just faithful, she was clever. And her survival wasn't rooted in submission, it was rooted in strategy. Now let's move on to the other internet persona, the boss babe. The boss babe is everywhere. She's on LinkedIn, she's on your For You page, she's in your inbox with a productivity course. She's in love with efficiency, obsessed with leveling up, and she'll teach you how to build a 7-figure business from your phone in Bali. She's the opposite of the tradwife. Where the tradwife says submit, the boss babe says secure the bag. But under all that glossy ambition, she's just a new version of an old goddess. She ruled over strategy, not rage, wisdom, civilization, laws, crafts, and politics. Basically, if it involved building a system and keeping it orderly, she was in charge. She was calm, logical, and respected. The kind of woman who drinks her coffee black, sends a group chat a productivity quote at 5 a.m. and has a 3-year vision board for her personal brand. And like the modern boss babe, Athena never married, never had kids. She wasn't about that life. She had cities to build, kings to advise. But here's what makes Athena complicated. She didn't reject the patriarchy, she excelled in it. She was one of the guys before that phrase was even a thing. Kind of like Margaret Thatcher, the only goddess who regularly sat at meetings with Zeus and the boys. She didn't cry, she didn't complain, and she definitely didn't take time off for her feelings. She was the original lean-in girly, the ultimate operator. She didn't storm the gates. She became indispensable to the gatekeepers. And the boss babe channels the same vibe. She's not trying to dismantle the system, she's trying to win it. That victory, well, it comes with a price. We don't talk enough about the shadow side of the boss babe. How many women you know who are wildly successful, secretly lonely, quietly burnt out, and managing everything perfectly while wondering who would love them if they ever stopped performing? Athena had wisdom, she had respect, she had power, but she was also isolated. No lover, no family, no softness allowed. Her brilliance came with detachment. She's the goddess of strategy, but there's something tragic about her. You see Athena energy in the women climbing ladders and smashing ceilings, but also in the ones who quietly break down in their cars before walking into meetings. In the women who have mastered the system, but sometimes wonder if they lost themselves in the process. Boss babe culture is obsessed with optimization, morning routines, meal prepping, hustle cultural, that girl aesthetics. Everything's tracked, everything's earned, and behind that, there's fear. Fear that if you stop performing, you disappear. And that's not divine. That's capitalism, baby. Athena had the head of a goddess, but she lived like the CEO. Artemis, her sister, was wild and free, but Athena is the one who would have the best branding, the mentorship program, and the Substack, the type A. So here's the thing. We're told these archetypes, the tradwife and the boss babe, they're total opposites. One is out in the world chasing success. The other is at home, preserving tradition. One wears a blazer, the other one an apron. You're supposed to pick, girl. Be soft or be strong, be nurturing or be driven, submit or succeed. But here's the truth. Both are performances. Both are curated personas designed to fit a story, not to tell the whole truth. And neither fully captures what women are or what we've always been. If you've been paying attention to myths, you already know the dichotomy wasn't live from the beginning, because none of these goddesses are just one thing. Hestia was soft-spoken but unshakable. Demeter was nurturing but vengeful. Penelope was loyal and scheming. Athena was brilliant and emotionally guarded. And none of them lived balanced, Pinterest perfect lives. They were extreme, messy, sacred, powerful, and set apart. Even in myth, women are told to choose hearth or battlefield, purity or power, childless autonomy or maternal martyrdom. Can't say that word. Just don't try to do both, okay? Modern women are still handed that same menu. Be a good wife, or a successful woman. Raise kids, or raise money. But don't expect to be praised for both, and certainly not at the same time. And none of them were balanced. They were extreme, mythical, messy, sacred, strategic, alone, and empowered. So why are women today still being asked to shrink down into one lane? You often hear conservative voices say women can't have it all. And honestly, they're not wrong. Time is finite. Biology is real. There are seasons for everything. And pretending you can be in boss mode, mom mode, wife mode, and hot girl mode all at once, all the time, is a recipe for burnout. You can't be in two places at once. You can't do everything forever. And there's power in naming that reality. But here's where those voices fall short. They forget that women were never meant to be just one thing. We're cyclical. We're seasonal. We evolve. You might be Athena at work, Hestia at home, Aphrodite on date night. You might channel Demeter when protecting your kids, Persephone in your 20s. You can be soft in one room and commanding in another. You can lead in a meeting and lead your family. You can shift from ambition to rest, from nurturing to rage, from retreat to reinvention. That's not weakness. That's not confusion. That's just feminine intelligence. That's how we are. It's the matter we accept it. We've been taught that switching modes means failure. That if you slow down, you are falling behind. That if you shift priorities, that you're inconsistent. But the truth is, you're not broken when you want to change or when you change. You're built to change. Okay? We are built to change. You're not just one archetype. You're not just a brand. You're not just an aesthetic. You're human. And humans, especially women, are not meant to be static. The problem isn't that women can't have it all. It's that society doesn't make space for the truth that we already are it all, just not all at once. The culture wants to sell you a costume, a persona, a lane to stay in. Be the boss, be the tradwife, be the girl next door, the girl boss. But, only if you're under 35 and have flawless skin. Pick one, stick to it, make it aesthetic. And whatever you do, don't get messy, don't evolve, don't change. But mythology knew better. The ancient world had goddesses for every phase of life, and a phase a woman could wear. Wildness, Artemis. Desire, Aphrodite. Wisdom, Athena. Surrender, Hestia. Creation, Demeter. Transformation, Persephone. Even destruction, Kali. They didn't flatten women into one role. They deified the multitudes. Real femininity was never just about looks or lifestyle. It was Hestia's steadiness, Demeter's rage, Penelope's quiet genius, Athena's icy precision. All of it in one body, in different seasons, on your own terms. That's not a brand. That's your birthright. The tradwife and the boss babe aren't opposites. They're symptoms. They're both polished performances, each with its own algorithms. They both offer comfort. One says, just lean into nature, men lead, you'll be safe, you don't even have to think. The other says, outwork everyone, never need anyone, you'll be safe. But neither guarantees wholeness. Neither leaves space for the messy in between. The real goddess who's running in on no sleep, putting a baby into nap before freaking starting to write content, wondering who she even is anymore. You can't have it all. Sure, true, but you can be 1,000 things in your lifetime, just maybe not in the same week. So whether you're folding laundry in a prairie dress, leading a team call in a blazer, or quietly burning out in your car between errands, you're walking in the footsteps of a goddess. But here's the thing that myths didn't always say out loud. Even the goddesses cracked. Even the goddesses wept. Even the goddesses withdrew, exploded, disappeared, transformed. You're not failing if you can't do it all. You're not weak if you change modes. You're just mythically feminine. So which one are you at this time? Are you Hestia? Athena? A mix? Drop it in the comments. And see you next time.